Welcome to the No Love Podcast, where we decrease tomorrow's divorce rate today by teaching singles and couples alike how to experience love on purpose and not by chance. I am your host, Edward L. Fairley, accompanied by my wonderful co-host, Michelle Larkin. Michelle, say hi to the people.
Hi.
All right. So today is a very interesting yet necessary topic. And for those who don't see the post before the actual show, the title of today's topic is When Titles Come Up, Investigations Must Go Down. I'm going to repeat that. And I was intentional about it being like, what in the world could that be about? Because I didn't want you all trying to figure me out before. And people have told me they try to figure it out first. So I was intentional about trying to make you all think. But the title is When Titles Come Up, Investigations Go Down. So I'm going to start the show by kind of asking some questions of things that you might recall or have seen. So have you ever seen someone get a new title or make it into a new organization or a new club or get a new degree or get a new title? And then after that, they change or act differently, or for lack of a better term, start power tripping. I remember because I'm in a part of the Divine Nine, and I really don't see this this live on my thread is really bothering me.
I'll check mine.
Oh, I see it now. Never mind. Okay. So I'm a part of the Divine Nine. For those of you who are not familiar with the Divine Nine, that is fraternities and sororities and the Pan-Hellenic Council. I am a member of Iota Phi Theta Fraternity Incorporated, across fall 2001. And one thing that was a common question that I would ask is, like, why you want to be a part of my organization? When people were trying to be a part of the organization, why you want to be a part of that? And it would give all of these examples as to why. And most of the time, it had nothing to do with what we stood for, which always irked me. It always irked me. But to say the least, oftentimes I would always say, like, if you are trying to make general statements, if you are a cornball, if no one likes you without a status, if you are not cool, the cool kid, so to speak, before you join the organization, you're not going to be cool after you join the organization. You put on the fraternity letters and things of that nature. It's just not going to happen like that. And I say all that to say this: a lot of people are obsessed with titles, and they strive to have them because they think that titles define and empower them or make them a new person. So now that I've kind of helped you wrap your mind around at least one experience that you've had with someone who changed after being given a title and explain why they did, the point of this show is to help you realize that a boyfriend, a girlfriend, my man, my woman, my husband, my wife, my niece, my uncle, my nephew, they're all titles. And if you pay attention, there's definitely people who walk along the world who speak in titles. And when that happens, I know so many people who speak in title, like they literally don't call people by their name. They call them by their title, or they introduce themselves. That's the most common. I'm deacon. I'm deacon such and such, or I'm doctor such and such. And I literally teach my children, when someone introduces you with their title before their name, listen very closely to what they say afterward, because for some reason they felt the need for you to associate them with this particular title, which either means they want you to automatically trust them, they have esteem issues, and they want to be portrayed as something that they might not be. So they feel the need to just not introduce themselves. They have to say something about title. And with that title, they have in their mind some type of definition that aligns with it, which we're going to get deep into. But I see Michelle writing some things. So I want to first ask, have you had any encounters with any of the examples that I just mentioned before we dive into why you need to investigate when titles come up, when investigation must go down when titles come up?
I mean, I think, yeah, I've had, of course, all of those circumstances. But I'm hesitant to make my statement because I'm trying to give room for the context of this conversation.
Okay.
Because there are several reasons and seasons and times why people use the title. And part of, they did the work to earn the title, so to speak. So I don't want to speak out of turn yet, but just know that I'm percolating on there's some balance.
Got it. That's good. I love it. All right. So that's great. So there's definitely nothing wrong with making sure that it's understood that you've earned something. That process of becoming a doctor, whether you have your PhD, this is definitely not bashing persons with titles. But I also know many people with titles who don't share their titles. People find out about their titles.
So you're focusing on the activity of using it as the opener, right? So I think what you're really honing in on is people who lead with that.
It's yes and no. So, and I say yes and no, which sounds confusing, but I'll elaborate. I say yes and no because it's more of the language than it is the introduction. So typically, and not always, the language of a person who is title driven, they speak in titles. They're always talking about, well, that is, like I said, pastor such and such, that's doctor such and such, and they always speak with titles first. And what they're doing is indirectly trying to help you understand the way that you should respond to that person or whomever they're talking to. And with that, and we've already had this conversation about this, they have expectations that align with what they're saying when they're sharing that title. So there's a definition that they have about that title that they want you to automatically kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Maneuver or to adapt to or respond according to the definition that they have about that title in their head. And I say all that to say this. There's some people who are adamant, just like you said, people worked hard to accomplish the actual degree. I'm glad you stated that because people work hard to accomplish titles. And they work hard to accomplish titles often. So go ahead.
I think that they work hard to reach a milestone, which comes with a title. And sometimes they put more weight on the title than the process. And I think that's where what we're talking about is, like you said, they're title driven. And some people, like you can drive toward PhD, get there, celebrate for 6 months. I'm Dr. So-and-so and then never mention it again.
Exactly.
But that's not title driven. That's different.
That's what I meant by,
that's the subtle thing.
That's what I meant by it's conversation, not necessarily the actual sharing, but
achievement of the title.
Yeah, the achievement. It's literally their conversation. That's how they speak. They speak in title. I literally know someone that says, "Niece, come here," and he's referencing his niece. He speaks in titles. And if you really get to the core of him, which is what we're talking about, he visualizes a hierarchy of titles. And with this title, this is what I expect of you because you have this title. And people who speak in titles, that's what their language is. That's how they're speaking. They're pretty much telling you that they either want you to align with the definition of this title, or they have this expectation of you now that you've been given this title. Or now they have the expectation of themselves, which is so weird that people change when they get a title, which is where we're heading in this whole conversation in the first place, because I would think that you should be who you were before the title, and the title should not change who you are. But it's so oftentimes that people will change according to the title, because in their mind, title means this, so this is what I am now that I have this. So I said all of that long behind intro to say that when it comes to relationships, meeting someone, and what I meant earlier when I said you said people work hard to get that, so they want to be, I guess, either appreciated or recognized for what their accomplishment, which is great, and they should be. But if that is their
including I achieved the title girlfriend. Oh my God, I want to be recognized. Thank you.
Yeah. So there are people who also work hard to achieve the title of spouse, achieve the title of husband, achieve the title of mother, achieve the title of anything. And with that, because of that, they typically speak to that with expectations that come behind the title that they are presenting or is speaking to all the time. So if you have someone that is interested in transitioning you into a title, like that is their focus, they harp on it, it's typically because they have a definition of who they want you to be in mind, or who they want you to become in mind. So
as it relates to the title.
As it relates to the title, so they speak to that in hopes that once you get it, you're going to become that, even though that might not be who you are, or once you get it, they will become something to you and expect for you to respond accordingly to who their now title is.
How do we know they're not just speaking things into existence? Because you know how we do.
Yeah, and it's great that you said that. But why do people speak things into existence? Because they're looking for a certain outcome. You don't speak things into existence unless you want change. You're speaking the change that you want into existence. So that is the whole point of speaking it to existence. So when people are focusing and they talk titles, you really need to investigate where that's coming from. Like I tell my children, listen very, very closely. If just a random Joe says, "Hi, I'm Joe," whatever, I said, you don't really have to hone in on every word. But if someone introduces you, I am president such and such, I'm coordinator such and such, I'm pastor such and such, I am this, their intent is typically to make you trust them or feel a certain esteem about them when it comes to their introduction. And when people do that from a relationship standpoint, if they're dating and they really want to make sure that you become wife, they really want to make sure they want you that you become husband, or they really want to make sure that you have this baby, which is very common, you really need to investigate that, whether it be through your observations or just asking questions. So hold on, why is it that you're so adamant that I become your wife or your husband? What is it that you think, we went to that, what do you think is going to happen after this comes into play? And listen, because I can assure you, I've been doing this for a long time, and I'm not even, I haven't even been on earth for a long time. But this is why they are talking, because they have in their mind the definition of what that title means, and they expect you to align with it. Even though they don't articulate what that is, in their mind, they have a hierarchy. And it's unfortunate, because I think you should treat people, you should treat all people with respect. And I hate to shift to respect, but typically when titles are given, that means they're diminishing other titles. And I deal with it a lot. I've been around a place, and I might be finished with a certain event, and I'm cleaning up, and they're like, "Why are you doing that?" That's a sexton's job. Speaking in titles, that's a sexton's job. They get paid for that. I can't clean up behind myself because that's a sexton's job. I'm finished eating. I'm picking it up, throwing it away. Why are you doing that? That's the waiter's job. Like I can't. Hey, why are you cleaning the bathroom? Listen, that's a woman's job. Why is she cutting the grass? That's a man's job. Title. They're titling different things and defining. That's not what you're supposed to be doing. Go ahead. I see you wrestling. Go ahead. Share. Go ahead, Michelle. Go ahead.
I mean, the titles help us to find some order. They're markings of structure within an organization or in a culture or a community. Like the sage, right? The senior in the community, or the preacher, the mom, the dad. They're sorting tools. So I'm just trying to make this subtle distinction that it's not necessarily, for example, when you tell your children to listen a little bit more closely when somebody says I'm president so-and-so, that they're necessarily starting with a certain skepticism. It's just that I believe that what you're saying is that you're asking them to be mindful, like just be engaged, like perk up, not necessarily step back and like look at them like, what are you about to drop? What bomb are you about to drop on me? Because you're trying to tell me something about who I am. Like, I think it's more perk up and be more aware.
And most certainly, and I'm glad you're asking me that. And I want to read some of these comments and statements because it kind of goes with. And first, let me answer you first. That's exactly right. There's nothing wrong with a title at all. And typically, if you listen to what I'm saying, when I'm doing it, they feel like I am lowering my standards when they say, why are you doing that? That's the section's job. You understand what I'm saying? They're looking at me with this esteem or with the title that they have in their mind about me and saying, why are you doing that? So there's definitely nothing wrong with titles. But I want you to listen to some of these comments. Someone said there are some that bought those fake titles yet running all around social media, calling themselves doctors, and people do buy into the titles. This person is Dr. So-and-so, therefore what they say must be the truth. Nah, I check everything, including credentials. Someone corrected me because I called someone I grew up with by his first name. They said, no, he is Bishop so-and-so. I was like, he is XYZ to me, especially in a normal chat session with a stranger I did not know past the conversation. Another one put, they want you to show them a higher level of respect because of their title when they introduce themselves with their title. I see you, Erica. Miss Maria Wall. It says, she says, society has taught many to buy into titles. We get into this conversation in a PhD group I belong to all the time. I say, can that PhD go into the operation room to save a life, or that courtroom and defend a case? If not, that PhD means nothing to a doctor or lawyer. At the end of the day, I still put on my pants one leg at a time, just like the person who picks up the trash or serves the meals. She got her hand up. Go ahead, Michelle.
I know we're wrapping this in the packaging of titles, but what you're really talking about, or what we're really talking about, is ego. And ego as relates to how they're presenting it through the title. Because when you start to try to position yourself in some sort of value system where you have to have better or worse, or good or bad, and you're trying to position yourself in a more positive way to leverage that position to get something, or like you said, that's maneuvering around your ego and just throwing a title out there like an ace card, like, hey, I won.
Which is the point of this conversation. When people speak like this, you need to investigate why they're doing it. It may not be with ill intent. It may not be with an ego. It may just be, as the young lady stated, societal, like a society thing. This is what I've learned.
Some cultures too. I agree. And some cultures are very,
society, culture. Yeah, I get it. So it can very well, which is why we're investigating. It doesn't say judge, it says investigate. Pay attention.
And that was the subtle difference I wanted to make, is that I don't want it to come across that it's about skepticism or distrust. It's more about, like you said, investigate, not necessarily judge. So you can come to an appropriate.
This is no different than our expectations show. But what we can't do is think that people have gathered the lesson from the other show, because some of these things are packaged in a way where you think you got it, but you didn't realize it when it was in this
another
particular
expression of the same thing.
Exactly. So I'm not saying that there's an issue with a title at all. I have multiple titles. I just don't use them. They're not necessary. It doesn't change who I am or how I can articulate what I do or anything of that nature. It's solely something that I've earned and actually was given to me. But I walk in quote unquote the characteristics of titles that have not been given to me, and they're assumed that I have titles because I am who I am. But I don't speak to people to let them know who I am. They see who I am through my actions. So all we're saying is when that is a constant thing, it's just something to say, make your ears perk up, and also say, start watching their actions. Like, why do they feel the need to do that? How do they respond to people when they bring up their title? Pay attention, because these are great things to do when you're dating somebody. You're dating somebody, you're considering transitioning, and you see them always talking about titles and this man or this woman. They never really speak about the actual person. They're speaking in titles. You need to be paying very, very close attention, because ultimately, if they're speaking in titles, they're ultimately wanting to make you a title. That's
true. And one of the things that, like, it's just stay in the dating scene. Right? I'm just talking in the dating and the male-female relationship. Like, it's part of what we're talking about, is part of the foundation for why people really have a problem with, after you get married, what changed about the relationship. It was about the title, right? Exactly. Because the only thing that should have changed is the title. But why is it that the relationship starts to either devolve or change, or there's some dynamic that changed because there was some attribute or energy or a expectation around the title that wasn't necessarily articulated. But like you said, you should be who you are before and after. Now, it's just a transition of relation.
Now we're reeling it in. That's the whole point. I want you to see the surface level. I want you to see how you see things in a day-to-day basis on a regular, but how it slowly works its way into relationships. These are still titles. It's just not the titles that we're talking about on a day-to-day basis. When we say president, when we say deacon, when we say pastor, there are people, if you, especially in those settings, like the young lady said, the guy said, no, that's bishop. He means, in his translation was, don't talk to him and just say his name. Like, yo, you don't know me and Bishop's relationship. You've never seen us outside of it. And you're going to say that to his mother? That's my child, boy. Who you think you're talking to? Jerome, if you don't get yourself over here, call him by his middle name. Like, so they're saying or using titles because, as we're very well seeing, there's a definition behind how you should be responding according to the title that they have an expectation for you to follow, or protocol for you to follow that aligns with the title that they have in their mind. And people that speak in titles typically do not explain what they mean by calling you that title. But in their mind, because I see it all the time, people who are having issues with their husband or their wife, who they call that all the time, they never say their name. And I'm like, I know who you're talking about. Why do you keep saying? But what they're really saying is, this is my wife. So why is she not doing what this wife is supposed to do? From a definition of wife, this is what my problem is. This is my wife. This is what she's supposed to be doing. This is my problem. This is my husband. This is what he's supposed to be doing. She just wrote, hold on, Miss Wall. She is typing. I'm loving it. She said, Dr. CEO, at the end of the day, I am just Grandma Pumpkin. That is what matters to me. Most never know my titles, because many people date and or marry titles. And that's so good. She said people date and marry titles. That's a whole nother topic.
I mean, but it's part of the sorting, right? So that's part of this whole pre-qualifications, the assumptions that you make based on what somebody has as a title, like, or the car they drive or whatever.
That's exactly right.
You're buying into this lifestyle that you've created as what you've associated with the title of their stature in life.
That's exactly right. Or I'm gonna marry me a pastor, so I'm gonna get this type of relationship. You don't know that pastor actually been beating on his wife. My father was a pastor. My father's doing 22 years for stabbing a woman 27 times, face and torso, as a pastor. Did it to my mom as a minister. Those titles mean absolutely nothing. It's the person. And when they speak in titles, you really, really need to pay attention to their mannerisms behind when they use the titles. And you need to ask them what they mean behind the titles when it's brought up, especially when they're always harping on a title. I'm not saying that a person.
You should flip that, and also you should be considering if you're craving a title, right? Like I was saying, if you're craving this PhD, but what is the reason? Wow. Like if you're not enjoying the process of getting the learning, then why? Because the flip side of that is people pursue titles to get the stature that comes with it, not enjoy the process of achieving the wisdom that it really represents. Right? That
goes back.
So it's.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I mean, like I was like the process of becoming has a milestone called the title, right? But if you get caught up in the title, you miss the process of becoming. And people even who focus on the title miss the benefit of the wisdom that it took to get the title, and they're really not tapping into all they could possibly benefit from that exchange.
And that's what I meant earlier when I said you said they're speaking into existence. Yeah, they're speaking that experience that they think comes with that title into existence. And it's something that really, really needs. And also I want to share some positive spin on this, because I don't, like you said, Michelle, want people to take away that titles are negative. They're not. There's times where I'm like, no, you are my woman, or you are my child. I need you to have you are worth more than the way that you're acting. About that. Exactly. Yeah, I need you to understand your worth and your value. I wouldn't even want to be with you. You wouldn't be my woman if I didn't think that you were of value. I wouldn't be this hard on you if you were not my child. That is your title or your status with me. So it's nothing bad about having titles, but if you live and you walk around with titles as your everyday conversation, your language, that means typically you have a hierarchy of what these things mean, and you expect things to respond or reflect according to what your definition of what comes with that title is. You expect that to come to fruition or just act its way out in life.
It sounds like you expect the benefits of the position, right? So if you're a mom, you expect your children to respect you. Unfortunately, if you weren't a mom that invested in them, it's likely that they might not respect you, exactly, regardless of the fact that your title is mom. So if you don't do the work that goes along with getting the title, the expectations can fall flat. And people will ride the mom thing. Like, I'm your mother, don't you tell me, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, hey, but do you have a relationship with the kid? Because if you don't respect what? The name? Respect the title? Exactly. Like, and that's really the issue. Are we supposed to respect the title, or are we supposed to respect the wisdom or the whatever the value that the title represents?
And see, and all we're doing every time you give an example, all you're doing is impacting exactly why this is such a necessary.
Which is an investigation, right?
Exactly.
It's the investigation part.
Because I have people, so I mentor young men, 11 through 18 years of age. They have fathers that have been incarcerated for 5 to 10 years. They come home talking about, I'm your father, you listen to me. What? Like, huh? That's not
make me assumptive.
But
exactly.
It's the title. I am your father. This is what I'm expecting. It makes me think of years ago, Fantasia did her she did her own biography or something like that. And the dad, Kadeem Hardison, he kept saying, Fantasia, I'm your father. Like, every time he wanted something to be done, he said, I'm your father. And it's like, this is what people are saying. I'm your man. I'm your husband. I'm your wife. And they're not really defining what that means. They're speaking in titles, and they expect you to respond accordingly. So this is for you, that person that's speaking like that. You need to explain what it is that you're saying. they're not hearing or understanding what you mean by saying I'm your man, or I'm your father, or I'm your son, or I had to have that. I'm your son. Remember, I had to share with my transparent. I'm your son. This is what I expected of you, mom. And because of that, I was disappointed in having self-esteem issues because it didn't meet my expectations of what my title that I gave her and I expected of the title to be. Ms. Walsh, she's sharing some stuff. I'm sorry. Every time I come across folks like that, do not let them go there when we are all in Walmart, because I will let them know we are all at the same place. I will bring them down from their high horse and put them back on a pony in a New York millisecond. Some people go for the title because it also validates their worth in some way. I respect the journeys to earn that title, not the title itself. Too many put in all that work so that they can be validated by having people to call them wife instead of wifey or doctor or PhD, because they need to be recognized. So all of this is done for the wrong reasons. Exactly. You're exactly right. And that's what I mean by you need to investigate, like, why does he or she do that? Are they trying to make themselves, are they seeking validation? Are they seeking, like, they don't feel validated in themselves, so they're crying for some kind of affirmation? That's what I mean by investigate. You need to investigate. Go ahead, Michelle.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, like the natural progression is then, so you investigate, you realize that there are unspoken expectations by virtue of the way they use the title, right? So yeah. you see that as a truth. So then what is your next step? It's kind of like, do you address the unspoken and respond accordingly? You know, and I don't mean this, I get bringing them back down, let me help you understand who you really are kind of conversation. But for example,
I wouldn't.
But you know, like say them, like if you're I'm your man, right? So like if you're saying I'm your woman, but I'm not really saying what I expect from you is that you could respect me and treat me with value the way I think that a woman that is your woman should be treated. I'm just screaming, I'm your woman. So after investigating, kind of what are you suggesting are the next steps in the process?
That's a great question. So a couple things. Honestly, it depends on where you are in the process. One, I would investigate by observation first, because I don't want to influence you shifting so that you can.
Because you want me to be who I am, right? If this is who I am, I should just accept you for who I am. Right?
Exactly. So that's what I mean by investigate. So really pay attention. Like, how is that person acting or responding in that type of setting when they always bring that up? If you're talking about transitioning from one place to another, meaning dating to a relationship or relationship to marriage, and they keep on harping on the title associated with the transition, I would definitely be direct and ask, well, what do you expect to happen once this transition takes place, and listen to what their expectations are. That can't be faked or even influenced, because you're just asking an open-ended question that they have to explain. And with that, you get the answers. And then from there, you respond accordingly. Don't try to change them. You make the decision based off of their truth. Don't move forward if their picture of you does not match who you are. Don't move forward. And you know, just like when I say that about the people saying, well, why are you doing that? That's the sexting job. I make a mental note. Okay, this person aligns. They're a title person. And I'm like, okay, I could still make the sexting have a easier day or a simpler day. And I just keep on cleaning. I don't need to check them. I don't need to humble them. I don't need to tell them that they need to have humility. That's something they need to work on their own. But I make a mental note, and I know how they are, and I start paying attention, and I respond to them accordingly. So, and even with them, like if I'm with other people, I'll make sure to say, hey, well, I'm gonna tell you right now, you might not want to approach this person this way because they don't look at you that way. And I'm honest, open.
Goes back to your bishop example, right? So it goes back to your bishop example. The bishops used to be being called the bishop all the time.
Yeah.
So now that you know that, when you next time see him, you may introduce him as the bishop, out of respect for how he sees the world. even if you know that his name's Joe. Like
Yeah.
you'll respect him in the environment that he's in.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But again, you also kind of uncovered some other clues about how they interact with the world.
Exactly. And it's kind of like, and what I mean by it's definitely, you need to be subtle with it, because it's just like that child that shares something with you and you blow up. Oh my gosh, I can't believe you're doing this or whatever. That's the last time they're sharing their truth or what's going on with you. So, but if you're subtle in your response, you blow up on the inside, walk away from it, and have your own moment about it, they're more than likely going to share more. But if you go off, well, I see, that's the problem. You people with your doctors and your bishops and the whatever, like, first of all, you don't know where it came from. Second of all, that's the last time they're going to, again, approach or they won't be receptive to sharing with you, because you blew up because of something that you thought of. Again, remember, we talked about this last show. Last show was people have a speaking problem because they have a hearing problem. You remember that? So if you flying off at the handle because this joker done said, well, call me, nah, my name is doctor, because the last doctor gave you attitude or was disrespectful, your hearing problem might have ruined or severed what could have potentially have been a great relationship. So that's what I mean. Investigate, like listen a little closer, pay attention to how they're responding, how they're talking to the people. And I definitely don't think anybody should just be calling people just by their names. I definitely think you should be respectful, sir, ma'am, or what have you. Even my children, when I answer them, it's yes, sir, or yes, ma'am, because I think all people should be respected. I don't have that mentality that there's a hierarchy. I answer my wife, yes, ma'am, and no, ma'am, and I do the same thing with my children, because I think they shouldn't get to a certain age and then automatically start being respected. I think they should just feel respected, no matter what their age is. I don't think there's a time. I just think all people should be respected and loved.
Everyone has value.
You said what?
Every single person. Everyone has value.
Exactly.
Value.
Exactly. When I talk to my children,
without any title or without anything, you have
exactly. But typically, when people who don't feel that way, typically, and I'm not saying this is always, they speak in titles. They just do, and it's unfortunate, because they, as the young lady stated, they have this idea that they want to be esteemed, or they want to be looked at with high esteem, and they expect for you to, like I said, if people treated all people with respect, people wouldn't feel the need to give a title to feel respected. I don't think it would be necessary. I don't think it would be necessary. Go ahead, Michelle.
So I grew up in an environment where titles were everything, and it was a faith-based environment. And I was raised around titles and the hierarchy. And one of the things, and growing up into an adult who had to take on some positions that had titles with authority, right? So I grew up seeing the disconnect between the attribute of the title and the actual person, and that caused me some angst, right? And so I was very sensitive to that. But then when I turn around, it happens to me, and I find myself in the situation of the person I was looking at and questioning, it makes me very sensitive to the fact that people do perceive titles and treat you a certain way. But I had, because of the way I grew up with the disconnect in the way it was represented, right? So it was a title without the experience. It was kind of like put on you because you sat in the seat, so you were X, and yet you didn't walk in the attributes of the title as it was given. And so then as you grow up, you have to turn the table and look, I have to be really, really sensitive, because I know that people who have given me a title are expecting certain things of me. And my intent is to put out with the title, I want to be the title holder that I want to see, is what I'm saying. Yeah. So be the change you want to be. I want to be the title holder that I would like to see. So I have to make sure that I'm authentic and respectful of the fact that I know that if you have respect for this title and you've given this title to me, then I have to behave in a certain way that is congruent.
Yeah.
And it doesn't cause you to disconnect because the flip side, like you're saying, so I know they're investigating me by virtue of having a title. I know you're investigating how I act as relates to my title,
Yeah.
and I have to be mindful of that. And that's a privilege and a responsibility. And so it's kind of like what you're saying. It's perfectly fine to investigate and ask clarifying questions, and it's perfectly fine to attain to have a title. But at the same time, once you achieve it, there's some responsibility that comes with the title.
Yes, most certainly.
You know, that to recognize that people are questioning and asking and looking and saying, well, if you did this, and I'll be transparent, like, you know, I got an MBA. There was a little bit of me, and I ain't gonna lie, that was like, yeah, what? And yes, I put them 3 letters behind my name. Yes, I did. But at the same time, it's not. I don't run around with them on my forehead.
Yeah, most certainly. It's not in your language. That's what I mean.
It's not in my language.
No.
No. But I recognize that when I'm in a room, when there are people who are using it as part of their language, you almost have to go, am I one of those people?
Yeah. No. And look, that was my indirect confession. Remember, I said, "Mom, like mom, this is my idea." And the only reason I'm about to share this, which aligns with Ms. Wall said, which she wrote a lot and she gave example, but the end summed it up very well. She said, "Titles poison some people's perception," and
They do.
And it's so great. And that's why we need to, if you're the one that's using the titles, define. And if you're the one experiencing someone that speaks about titles, investigate to get their definition so that you can respond accordingly. But I remember in with you speaking out loud about that, your whole growing up with titles. Remember in the beginning of our process, you and I, when you would be dealing with people in business, everything was fine. Soon as that person, y'all started talking and it seemed like, wow, I actually like him. I think he likes me. You went to titles and you didn't know what the heck to do. And I'm like,
safe spot. It was a barrier. It was the perfect barrier. I am X. I am your consultant. I am your, I don't know, partner in crime. I don't know, but everything but girlfriend. We're not doing that one.
But that is the danger of titles being such a influence in your thought process, in your psyche.
It's about identity. I will tell you.
Of course.
I'll be very clear. It is very closely linked to identity. I have a lot of comfort in the professional space with the identities, regardless of the title, because I feel very comfortable in that space. I'm not as comfortable with the attributes or the expectations that come with the titles in the personal space, right? So I avoid them like the plague. I'm not like, I don't need it. I don't need a title. But unfortunately, to be honest, not wanting, needing, even being comfortable with titles in that space has kept me from having defined relationships, because I won't allow the structure of the title to add that attribute to the relationship because I feel uncomfortable with them. So and that's because of my insecurities. And so being able to even identify it, right, is being able to say like, oh, well, look, I'm really comfortable over here. I'm not comfortable over here because that title issue triggers something. It triggers my identification with that title means what? It means that if I become girlfriend and I think girlfriend means X, oh my God, I don't want to be that. Exactly. So then I step back. And so you got to check your internal noise. Like what's going on? You
said it best. Like it often is based off of insecurities. And that's why it's typically presented first. It's a audible mask. It's
a very good mask. Trust me, I have had several.
It's an audible mask.
One of the tools in the toolkit to keep people over here.
Yeah. Most certainly, it's an audible mask, and that's oftentimes, and that's why I tell people, even with themselves, like investigate, like why is it that you want to do that, and that's what I meant when I asked the people when they're talking about being in my fraternity, like why do you want to be in my fraternity? Why did you want to do this? When I was going through the process of bringing people into our organization, like why? And when you get to the core of why people, like they were like, well, I haven't had any brothers and sisters. I'm like. And then I'll poll the room. Has anybody in here had brothers and sisters? They be like, yeah. I'm like, do you like your brothers and sisters all the time? No. Do you fight with them? Yes. And it's like, yo, you have in your mind what a brother or sister is.
One attribute of brother.
Exactly.
One attribute.
Exactly.
Not all of them.
And so you're trying to jump into this organization thinking that this is going to be kumbaya, when in actuality, you're going to set yourself
that brings up a good point. It's the weighted interpretation of the title,
of course,
based on your own personal filter. So if you have a history with bishop, say, right? So you have a history with bishop. Let's just use the Catholic Church, for example. There's a history with priest, right? So you put that attribute on priest, not realizing that you've now weighted it now, and you're going to filter that no matter who you meet. Priest is going to mean X, and it's like exactly. you that's not even a holistic approach.
This is exactly what my point is when I say, when titles come up, investigations must go down. You have to be mindful of why they're using it. There's a reason. No one just uses words. I'm sorry. They don't just say things. It's not, people just don't haphazardly come up with different things to say, or even words that they use quite often. It's not a thing. And if you don't address it, it's going to always be better. Yeah, it's definitely a pattern. Yeah, most certainly. So you need to be paying attention. That should be a flag, like, oh, this dude keep calling me wifey. Like, why you keep saying that? Now, I don't want you to get overboard with this. Like, I call my wife Bae, B-A-E. It's just a term of endearment. It's the difference between titles and term of endearment. So don't go crazy with this. Why you keep calling me baby? You trying to feed me breast milk? Like, what do you? Don't go crazy with this. This is not about terms of endearment. This is solely about people who speak in titles. And I can assure you, if you're listening to the show, you're gonna start hearing it a lot now that we've had the conversation, because it's top of mind. Like, yo, why does my uncle do this? Why does my aunt say that all the time? Like, they're speaking with expectations of people's responses and outcomes and how they expect them to respond to them. And they also are speaking to how they expect for you to receive them when they respond to you according to their expectations. Go ahead, Michelle.
It also it indicates how they see the world, because sometimes you'll find that in different generations, people use the words differently. So your grandparents may use titles differently than, say, we use titles now. And for them, it might be a term of high reverence and respect. And if we're filtering it through the generation where it's not, you could be offended without doing the investigation and figuring out, well, where is this coming from? Like, exactly. It could truly be a term of endearment, and they're not trying to put you in a pigeonhole, but it's what they've learned.
That's why
so asking those questions could uncover some good information.
And that's why my response to you was, I would observe how they're responding when the titles are used at first. I would just sit back and watch. And as I stated, like, oh, wow, he does that because he thinks highly of whomever or whatever. So he uses that title all the time. You call me bro all the time. You gave me that title, but I know that means that you feel that we are family. And that's true. When I respond to you via text, it's sis, because in my mind, that's family. Like, I can't see myself calling you friend. Like, where we are in our relationship, that title means that to me. That's why I call you that. But I don't call you that all day long, sis. It is when we respond, it's just me letting you know, like, yo, this is how I feel about you. I love this woman. That's my sister. And it's not always the same. It's not in every text, but it's in certain texts. And it's just to kind of format where this text is coming from. Sis, you've been on my mind. Hope all is well. So it's just, again,
It's
titles
critical
are
thinking,
not a bad
right?
thing.
It's really teaching us to be present, to be honest.
That's
At the
excellent.
at
That's
the end
wonderful.
of the day, what we're asking ourselves to do is be present in the conversation and pick up all the context clues, including if. And here's the other thing: like, so suppose somebody is super title driven, like their insecurities are like screaming, they're all on their sleeve. It's just like whoa, like flashing red lights. You are insecure. Um, but wouldn't that at some point, first it's going to offend you because it's annoying. But after a while, if you get past it, you're kind of like, maybe there's a hurt in there.
That
Like, that's really deep.
and see,
That's
that's when you've gotten to a place of wisdom. When I see that, I feel bad and I feel sad for the person. But I'm not going to call them out on what it is. I make note of it, and that's what I mean by observe. Call them out on what it is. I'll either pray for them, but oftentimes I just feel bad because I understand where they are because I've been there, and I feel bad for them. I don't ever feel the need to belittle anybody or talk down to anybody or like you said, like it is. People are screaming, "I hate myself." Call me doctor, please, so that I could, for that moment, feel good about myself. And it's no different than smoking or drinking or whatever. It might feel good in the moment, but if you don't address that actual issue, the reason behind that need for that validation or affirmation from other people, you're gonna always be miserable. You can get as many degrees as a thermometer. You can get as many accolades as you want. You can write however many books. You can do so many. You can become a superstar, but those people are committing suicide.
Social
because they're not addressing the actual inner issue like that. And I talk to these young people all the time and like, what birthday can you can't wait to get? They're like 16, 18, 21. I'm like, well, how old were you last year? I was 10. Okay, well, on the day before your 11th birthday, did you feel any differently than you did the previous day? And like, no. And I'm like, that's exactly how it feels or is going to feel on your 16th birthday. It's exactly how it's going to feel on your 21st birthday. It's not going to feel any different. You're deciding that expectation or when you get to that destination, it's going to be life-changing. The world is going to be better. It's not. It's an internal switch that you have to turn on. You have to be happy with yourself now. You have to love yourself now. You have to love yourself before you're named wife, before you're named mom, before you're named dad, before you're named whatever. You have to already have whatever feelings or expectations of feelings that you have for when you arrive there. You have to have it now, or you're not going to have it once you get there. Go ahead, Michelle.
I was a little so just use 16 for example. I had
Did what? Say again. I didn't hear what you said.
Your birthday.
Oh, sweet 16. Go ahead.
Birthday. Yeah. So you won't experience the difference that you're hoping that day brings unless you set some intention so that day actually is a milestone. It's not the 24-hour cycle of the sun rising on that day that makes you feel different. It's not that this many days of your life have taken place that makes that day have some sort of difference. It's what you plan to have at that time or what you expect to, but then what actions you take. Like you won't feel like if you think that 16 means I'm going to turn into a man, right? And you don't do anything to get you to manhood or take any responsibilities that will, for example, no rite of passage at 16. Like some people have quince, right? Like in some cultures, there's an event at 16 that will allow you to transition. But again, that's something else. Yeah, something like that, right? So, but there's an activity that takes place that is a milestone. So a milestone doesn't necessarily make you feel different. It's the achievement that makes you feel different. It's the becoming of something that is marked by some sort of activity. So yeah, you're right. It doesn't make the sun coming up on that day you're right. The same day it was yesterday. If you have intentions on having milestones, then put the work in so that you can actually celebrate something at that day or whatever. It's no different than your graduation, right? So you celebrate your graduation because you put the work in. You got the piece of paper. And yeah, that day as I woke up, I was the same person until I got the piece of paper in my hand. Then I was a different person. But I did the work. Is that, like, all I'm saying is that there are some attributes about what we're saying about titles and the experience and all that, but that has warrant. Like, it is so worth it to put in the work. It's so worth it. But at the same time, that critical thinking and investigating, it's a constant work. Like, this is just one of the different things that you should be present on. You should be present enough in a conversation with somebody, right? That you can pick up the clues that we talk about every week. Like, be here.
I'm wise enough to know that just one show is not going to make sure someone gets something. I'm going to have to show the different faces of different topics. This is pretty much a show on expectations. It's just packaged differently. We already did the show on expectations, but it doesn't mean that you got it when I presented it on expectations. So now when I teach, I know that the only way that I know that I understand something is when I take that new thing and I incorporate it, or I can show the relationship of the new thing with something that I know for sure. So if I can see a correlation with something that I know for sure, which my gifting is relationships. So I see relationships in every single thing. It doesn't matter what the topic is. I see relationships because my gifting is relationships. My calling is relationships. Anything that I see from a learning standpoint is going to be relational. So for that, I can speak to the relationship. So I was showing the link between our common everyday experience when it comes to titles and how that works in the grand scheme of dating someone or being in a relationship with someone that speaks in the titles that they do. There is a reason and a rationale behind why they speak that way. It does not have to be negative. You should not go into it with a negative connotation. It's unfortunate that it's the negative experiences that we remember first, which is why I start with that, because I know that is going to draw a picture in your head. So that is where I start with, but it can easily be something positive. So, which is why I started the previous show with having a speaking problem is from having a hearing problem, so that when you're investigating, you are going into this with a better hearing so that you can speak to your questioning or questioning of the title when that conversation or topic comes up, because you're hearing properly. If you took the previous show and the information that was shared, if you start hearing properly, now you can go and speak to, hey, you know what? You keep saying, you really, really want me to be your wife. Like, what's going on? Why do you feel that that's so important? We are in a good relationship. It's only been 5 months, 6 months, but you're really adamant that I am your wife and that you can call me your wife. Why? Why is that? Do you feel that something is going to happen?
You hope to attain with the wife type.
Exactly. So that's all this is. It's a repackaged show to go more in depth in a particular topic. And that's what this whole journey is going to look like, because I know that some people are not going to just get it from the expectation show. They're not going to get it from this show. So there's going to be another in the future, different way to look at this particular topic. Just like everything we talked about went to insecurities and self-esteem. We already did a self-esteem show, but somehow we were able to speak to for over an hour this particular show, when this is really if you go back to it, it is a self-esteem issue. So it's all. So all we're doing is showing different ways to address the understanding, which is why we call it no love. Because when you know and understand it, you see all of these things in their different faces and the way that they present themselves, so that you don't get caught up and caught out there assuming something is that it's not. That's all. So
That's all.
that's all.
That's all.
So any final words while we close out this show?
No, I think that the no love process or the paradigm that you teach is a journey, and the intent of doing a series of conversations is to be kind of like guides or just markers along the way to let people know they're going in the right direction. So
Exactly.
I know love. Thank you, Chief.
and it's that's what I want to happen with this journey. I want you to see love and know it. So many people don't know it. So they're walking into things thinking that they're in something that it's not. That's why we do the #9s for truth, meaning you can't escape the number when you multiply it by 9. It always goes back to 9. So that's what truth is. So true love, you will know it when you see it, but you first have to know it first so that you can identify it when you do. So we're going to always continue to unpack the layers of love so that you can really say, I know love. And when it comes to you and it's not, you call it for what it is and you dismiss it, or you dismiss yourself so that you don't put yourself through anything outside of the realm or the warmth of actual love. And with that being said, I appreciate your minds and time. Until we meet again, I love you all. Be safe and have a wonderful rest of your week.
Bye.
Bye.